think I moved her. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Catskills. I'm Kathy Atwell. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the worship assistant for this morning. Our Sunday service guest this morning is Reverend Evan Pritchard, Evan T. Pritchard, an interfaith minister. He's a descendant, I'm sorry, I meant to ask you before. How do we say? Okay, a descendant of the, am I?
Well, I'm a descendant of a lot of
Mi'kmaq? Mi'kmaq people, and has taught Native American studies at Pace University, Vassar College, and Marquette College, and is the director of the Center for Algonquin Culture. Steeped in bird lore by his great aunt Helen Purley, and he's the author of several books, including Native New Yorkers and No Word for Time. A regular on radio shows such as NPR Fresh Air and on the History Channel. He lives in Hudson Valley. We're delighted to have all of you who are attending here in person and through the miracle of Zoom. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith that carries no creed and welcomes all seekers. We are guided, can you hear okay, Carol? Okay. We are guided by a set of principles and written sources that encompass the many ways we come to know and understand the world and the universe and the divine. Our principles are important to us at UU Catskills, and we live our values on a daily basis. We affirm Black Lives Matter. We're a welcoming congregation of LGBTQ+ community. We're an affiliate of the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network, and we have a robust social action group. And we are an active voice in the effort to address climate change. We gratefully acknowledge the Indigenous people on whose ancestral homeland we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their homes here today. If you'd like to contact someone at UU Catskills, please visit our website, uucatskills.org, or find and like us on Facebook and Instagram. For information on upcoming events, we encourage you to read our monthly newsletter that's distributed through our email list and on our website. If you're a visitor and would like to raise your hand and introduce yourself, please do. Do you want any of our visitors? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Julie Walsh. I'm here with my godson, Pritchard, and we're friends with Evan. So we'll be filming, and I've been to the congregation before, so nice to see you.
Yeah, good. Welcome, welcome. If you're feeling restless or have someone with you who's getting a bit antsy, we have a room across the hall where you can relax and still hear voices. Still hear the service. I don't know where that came from. Still hear the service. If you're attending on Zoom, please stay for a virtual coffee break after today's service. And those who are here in person, you're welcome to mix and mingle with light refreshments after the service. Our Zoom host this week is Don Pritchard. Our tech host here in the sanctuary is Tom Hackett. And Kathy D'Amato is our social hour host. I have a couple of announcements. I'm not sure which to start with, but I will start with maybe the downer. Just to let you know, a few people tested positive for COVID who were at the concert last week with the children. So if you're feeling a little queasy, you might want to get one of those tests. And so next Sunday, Conversations with Lay Leaders is scheduled post-service August 18th with a focus on the 2024 General Assembly. Given the significance of the offer to buy our property, members of the Board of Trustee and Buildings Task Force will be available to address questions related to the property sale And on that note, we have exciting news. We have received an offer of $725,000 from a qualified buyer who wants to purchase our property, all of it, as is. For the proposal to be accepted, it is necessary for us to hold a congregational vote to sanction the sale. Therefore, please be advised that a congregational meeting has been scheduled for Sunday, August 25th, starting at 11:45. In adherence to the UU Catskills bylaws, a quorum of 33% of our members must be present for the vote to be legitimate. Your participation is critical. Please prioritize this meeting, and you may attend in person or virtually via Zoom. Now, we did send out an all-congregational message. Catherine did not see it. It had ended up in her spam. So if you have not received a message telling you about this meeting on the 25th, please check your spam and see if it landed there, because it's going to be critical that we have members there to voice your opinion, yay or nay. We as the building task force, we as the board, do not do these things on our own. So very important you be there. All right. So, is he coming back? Yeah? Okay, I'll talk slow. We ask you to turn off your cell phones or other electronic devices and settle into this morning as we gather here together. I guess we have a little bit of time. We have the prelude, and we're going to do the prelude, and Catherine told me to not even try. Not even try. So if you see that, the composer and who wrote it, so, by the title. Thank you, Catherine. Well, just kind of stall. Okay. Look at this. So would you like to do it? Usually we have the children light the candle, but Jake's preoccupied at the moment. So we'll light the chalice with these words. We light this chalice in grateful, loving community. Even in the darkest of times, may its flame light paths, courage, justice, and hope. Thank you. This is Jake's mom, so she probably has to step in a lot for when Jake, yeah. And then our unison affirmation, May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in the community, and in each other. And I just wanted to say sort of right off, we are in for such a wonderful morning. Reverend Pritchard's not only going to read some of his writings, he's going to sing some of his songs, and play the flute and play his guitar. So we are thrilled. I am thrilled to have him. And so with that, he's going to read his opening words that he has written.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. So this is not the usual kind of prelude reading, but I wanted to read from this book. It's called The Light of Early Morning, which I'm writing about Mama Nuchwe, who was the chief of this area. And I would say this is the Wakonk people lived here of the Sopas Muncie. Wakonk is a word for the Sawkill Creek, and this whole valley was called Wakonk, or Peaceful Valley. So you're lucky. Now you know. So I'm just going to read from an introductory part of the book about Mama Nuchwe. So Mama Nuchwe lived in what is now Ulster County. By the way, Mama Nuchwe means striped blanket. She lived in what's now Ulster County in a time far removed from our own, and yet in many ways she was a very modern woman facing similar challenges. She was a working mother trying to balance motherhood and career. Her career happened to involve being chief of an entire nation, and she happened to be mother of 7 gifted children. She fought for equality for women, and what's amazing about her is that she actually achieved it, at least for herself, without the assistance of modern conveniences. But there were many other themes in her life that parallel her own. And as Amy Trumpeter of Ruby Blackbird Theater has written, in Mama Nuchwe we discover an ally. We celebrate anew her footsteps that walk softly and swiftly beneath our now paved over Ulster County highways and byways. And we are searching for what Mama Nuchwe can teach us about living through our own world crisis. Now I say, although it's not up to me to approve or disapprove the choices she made, the issues she faced then are our own issues now. And as you continue searching for clues as to the real story behind this forgotten person, I find in her inspirational role model for facing the issues that really count. And I'm just going to read a couple. Equal rights for women, environmental awareness, living not just on the earth but with the earth, nonviolence, peacemaking is a priority, living without fossil fuels, which she did just fine, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, sustainability, abundance and productivity through a barter economy without conventional money, managing the effects of colonization, war, and mass migration, enlightened parenting, earth-based spirituality, eating healthy, participation in the arts, staying in shape, freedom of speech, thinking of the next 7 generations, standing up to corruption, dealing effectively with pandemics more deadly than we can imagine, protection of sacred sites in Ulster County, and she used regenerative farming, so, which I saw the film right here. Anyway, that's my opening words. Thank you. Okay, so what I'll do is the flute and then guitar. Okay. We're making.
So you have the words.
Okay, so first, I always like to have a little flute meditation, so we can all meditate a little bit. And this is very good. Okay, so in my Mi'kmaq tradition, we use flute as a meditation, and so what you do is you can close your eyes and follow the flute, but of course it's very spontaneous because I don't know what I'm going to play, and neither do you, so you just have to kind of flow with the way it's flowing. And it's all about flow. So close your eyes, and I'll play for you. I'll keep your eyes closed for 1 more minute. So as you're sitting here, I want you to surround yourself with a medicine shield of healing white light that nothing can penetrate for the next turning of the earth, for the next day. Imagine that day going really well. And surround yourself with a cocoon of love and fill it with light for the next turning of the earth and forever. And say, all my relations. Now, you all have some words in your program of a song I wrote called Fire in Our Hearts. Oh. Just wait a minute. And you can keep meditating while I tune. As you tune into the universe there with that. Nothing worse than playing a song in E when you're in D tuning it. So obviously this guitar has gotten out of tune. Okay. This is based on the creation stories of Algonquin. In the dawning day, I was made from clay. My hands were cold as ice. And I asked God to save me, and soon Creator gave me a fire from the skies. And while in circles turning, I kept the fire burning from sea to shining sea. 7 sparks all flew up, and where they landed grew up to be the Wabanaki. And from this flame a nation was formed, and from each one 7 more were born. 50 nations got a good start, and each one with the fire in its heart. Here's the real good sing-along part. Sing-along. Way, hey, ya, hey, hey, with the fire in its heart. Way, hey, ya, hey, hey, with the fire in its heart. Way, hey, ya, hey, hey, with the fire in the heart. Way, hey, ya, hey, with the fire in the heart. With the fire in its heart. With the fire in its heart. Blessed and barely troubled, soon their nations doubled from sea to shining sea. Harvesting and hunting, millions lived in something now known as peace. But heaven never lasted, and soon they all were blasted by thunder, sticks, and war. The nations all were scattered, their moccasins all tattered and torn from the war. And somehow that first fire was saved, and somewhere far it secretly blazed. because the ancient prophets told, and they told the people which way to go. And here's the sing-along chorus. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, way, hey, ya, with a fire in their heart. With a fire in their heart. With a fire in their heart. Now here comes the spooky part. Strangers arrived with hunger in their eyes, and they devoured the land. So to the land of Otter, where food was on the water, my people ran. They found the sacred fire, and they were safe a while, but some day they'd find that if earth is not protected by all, then hate rejected in time, the fire would die. Pontiac and Tecumseh both died, right, trying to keep that fire alive. And in 1812, the warriors fell, but where they went, the fire went as well. Let's sing out. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, way, hey, ya, with a fire in their heart. With a fire in their heart. With a fire in their heart. Well, now you've heard the story, its sorrow and its glory, and now it's up to you. And is the fire in you, and will the tale continue? And now it's up to you. The stories of creation and the fires of every nation, and now in your hands. But can you help the rivers, and can you help deliver the land for greedy hands? 84 Algonquin nations now sit around a fire that's yet to be lit. All it takes is one little spark, but can you light the world with a fire in your heart? A little slower now, go. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in your heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in their heart, your heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, hey, with a fire in your heart. Away, hey, ya, hey, way, hey, ya, with a fire in your heart. With a fire in your heart. With a fire in your heart. Thank you. Thanks for singing. So I guess I'll go right ahead and do the story. Okay, so I'll do a short version. Okay, so there's this really old story that's so long ago. It has nothing to do with us, right? None of them do. This one's called Kono, the world's greatest gambler. And you know, Kono was like really macho and really, cool, and he had his hair swept back, and he was like powerful. And Kono was called the world's greatest gambler. And, gambling, it's an iffy thing. So the Ho-Chunk people, which you sometimes call the Winnebago, and inappropriately, but we won't go there, but the Winnebago, the Ho-Chunk people, love to gamble already. So when Kono showed up and said, I'm the world's greatest gambler, you people, you're just pilling around, you don't know what you're doing, and I can teach you how to gamble, and I can teach you, get this, the real meaning of gambling. And they go, great, we want to learn the real meaning of gambling because that's a lot of what we do. Okay, so go ahead. So he said, well, I'll set up a little workshop, and he came out of his posh wigwam, and set up this workshop for everybody to teach them the real meaning of gambling. And they all wanted to know what the real meaning was. Obviously, he was really good. He never lost. He knew every game. So they would come and they would say, yes, we want to play gamble. We want to gamble with you. We play these games, and we want to learn what you know. He says, okay, so to learn, you have to actually do. I can't just read it from a book. You have to participate and play the games of gambling. And they said, okay, what games? And he said, any game you can name, I can play. And what he meant was, I can beat you. And so they thought of all the various games, a lot of them. There's the stick game and the card game and the Woltis game and there's the Peach Pit game. There's all these games. I'm sure you all know. And so he could play them all, and he would play, and they would, they said, you have to put up some wagers or you can't gamble. It's not gambling, you put up some. So what do you got? Well, we've got, wampum, and we've got some money-like stuff. We got the beadwork, and we've got, various things we exchanged. He says, okay, bring it on. So they kept bringing all their valuables, and he kept winning because he's Kono. And he says, are you learning yet? Well, no, we need more workshop because we're not getting it yet. Okay, so what do you got? Well, we're all out of our exchange money. We're all out of our usual trade goods. So what do we do? But we still want to learn. He says, well, you got any corn, beans, and squash? Oh, yeah, the Three Sisters, sure, we got a lot of that. Well, bring it on. Just pile it up, and we'll, gamble for that, and I'll continue to teach you about gambling. And so they brought all their corn, beans, and squash, and guess what? What do you think happened? He won, yeah. And so they said, wow, this guy's so good. We want to learn what he learned. So, we want to play more, but we don't have any more corn, beans, and squash. He says, well, okay, so you've got, your clean water and your clean air and, your soil. I say, yeah, we do. Well, we'll gamble that. So they put that on. Of course, he won. And then on and on. And so he keeps taking all this, and he's winning, and he's piling it up. You got any firewood? Oh, yeah, we got some of that. We'll gamble that, too. So he's gambling. Of course, he won. And it goes on and on. Any medicines? Yep. Well, let's gamble the medicine. That's a good thing to gamble. And so, of course, he won, And so it kept happening. And finally came in and said, we really want to learn more about gambling and the true meaning of gambling, but we're broke. Okay, do you get it? She says, okay, well, but you can't just stop. And you can't win back your losses unless you play more to get back your losses, right? Got any women and children? And of course, here the traditional storyteller is supposed to go, oh my gosh, these people are nuts, but I won't do that. So they bring their women and children, and he puts them in this big pen, like a zoo, and he says, okay, here they are, they can't escape, and now let's play. And so ultimately they lost the women and children, so they had absolutely nothing. And then, this was like, are they learning the meaning of gambling yet? No, none of them got it. Okay. So what happened was these super beings from another planet dropped by, and they saw what was happening. They said, this guy, he's not human. You think he's human. He looks human, but he's not. He's a super being, all right. He was one of those people in the original planet Earth. This is the sci-fi part, but it's actually a 1,000 years old story. Then they wrote sci-fi back 1,000 years ago, and he said, that guy, he's not normal. He's not human. And he's from another planet, and he was from the original creation, and he was trying to work, and he was really difficult. And so the people, they weren't people, but the super beings that were here with him had a vote to vote him off the planet. And he was voted off the planet, you see, but then, he went away for a while, but now he's back to get revenge this time, okay, to get revenge. And he wants to do this to get back at the human beings and the planet. So we are actually super beings ourselves, and we're going to turn ourselves into animals so he doesn't recognize us, because he'd remember from 1,000 years ago. So we're going to play games with him. So what they do, they turn into Wakchankaga, which is this one being who's like a black raven. We call him Raven Boy. And then there's him, and then there's like a crane, and there's weird man they call Fork Man, who has 3 bodies on one set of legs, and it's pretty weird. So anyway, there's this whole story where Kono brings his best. He has the owl, of course. Owl is kind of creepy. And so there's a staring contest between Owl and Wakchankaga, because Wakchankaga is a raven who also stares. So they're staring at each other for hours, and nobody's winning, because the first one to blink is the loser, right? So then Thundercloud comes by, and they say, hey, work with us. You know what to do. So the Thundercloud goes over Owl's head and drops a raindrop into his eye, and he blinks. So he loses, you see, and everybody cheers. And then there's another game where they play jackstraws, and of course Crane can just get in right in there with his beak and take the jackstraws out with no trouble. And then they were going to play a card game, and Kono's people were there. But what happened was that Forkman showed up because it was his house, because he was away. And when Forkman showed up at the door, everybody ran out of the building because he was scary to them. And so that's how the super beings posed animals won back all of that winnings from Kono. So what's the meaning of gambling? You have to be willing to lose everything. And is it worth it? Don't gamble. Okay, and any kind of modern applications you can find is up to you. But for the kids, it's good not to gamble. And if you do, just keep it like really small. Because if you don't gamble away your Tinker Toys, your Barbie or anything, okay, just stay reasonable. So that's my story, thank you. And that's an old story.
This friendly place, lovely lights to every face. May that kindness which you learn light your heart till you return. Pritchard has agreed to play his flute again, so we take a little, do the meditation. I was going to do it, but that was so lovely. He said he'd do it for us, so we're going to let him do it again.
Do we have any reverb on the mic? No, okay. All right, well, close your eyes again, and we're going to meditate. And we'll just follow the sound of the flute, because you don't know where it's going to go, and you can have a whole frame of mind that's totally spontaneous. You can open your eyes now.
So we're going to take a brief step back because I forgot the social action minute. So Donna Schleckman is going to share with us social action, and then we will go on with our offertory.
Thank you, Kathy. Actually, this fits really well with our offertory because Harambe, one of the recipients of our half plate, is having its annual African American Festival on the 24th of August. It's from 1 to 7. Anybody who knows me well knows I am time and calendar challenged, so you may have heard a different time, but the latest one I know is from 1 to 7. We're still looking for a few volunteers. If you haven't come ever, come. All the festivals that we have downtown in the Strand in Kingston, Lower Broadway, are celebrations of culture and community. And this one is no different. It's a celebration of culture and community. And if you know anything about Harambe, Harambe means the bringing together of people. So let's get together and come and celebrate. We have a UU booth, the booth that we've had before. We know how to do this. We give information. We give adults and kids temporary tattoos. It's a lot of fun. There's lots of vendors, fun things to see, good food to eat, good music, dancing, just a celebration. So if you want more information, see me. If you want to volunteer and you haven't, I don't have your name, let me know it. Thank you.
Now is the time during our Sunday service that we remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space and our community. We give with the faith that together we are enough. If you wish, you can go to our website after the service and select Half Plate Donation tab or mail your check to our address. We share our Sunday morning basket with 8 local nonprofits, as Donna said, and see our website for the list. So we are giving Catherine a break this morning, and Reverend Pritchard's going to play for our offertory.
There's a couple of Mi'kmaq words in here, like Welalen means thank you, and Gitche Manitou is great spirit, and Abokan Mawi means help me. Oh, great spirit, hear my song. My heart thanks you all day long. I say thank you for the day and the night. Thank you for the dark and the light. I'm calling, can you hear me? Welalen, Abokan Mawi. Great spirit, I hear it, you're calling me too. Welalen, I thank you, Gitche Manitou. Gitche Manitou, Gitche Manitou. Eagle fly and take this message to the highest sky. Take my prayers, and as you carry them into the air, please take care. Well, thank you for my victories, and for bringing me to my knees. And thank you for the lessons you teach. Thank you for the stars I can't reach. I'm calling, can you hear me? Welalen, Abokan Mawi. Great spirit, I hear it, you're calling me too. Welalen, I thank you, Gitche Manitou. Gitche Manitou, Gitche Manitou. You can actually sing along this part too. Eagle fly and take this message to the highest sky. Take my prayers, and as you carry them into the air, please take care. Thank you for the food that I eat, whether it is sour or sweet. And thank you for the fish and the fowl, for the eagle and the owl. You can sing along. I'm calling, can you hear me? Welalen, Abokan Mawi. Great spirit, I hear it, you're calling me too. Welalen, I thank you, Gitche Manitou. Gitche Manitou, Gitche Manitou. Eagle fly and take this message to the highest sky. And take my prayers, and as you carry that into the air, please take care. And thank you for the young and the old, for the heat and the cold. And thank you for the dark and the light. Thank you for the day and the night. I'm calling, can you hear me? Well, a bokamawee. Great Spirit, I hear it, you're calling me too. Well, then I thank you, get you Manitou. Get you Manitou, get you Manitou. Come on, sing this part. The eagle fly and take this message to the highest sky. And take my prayers, and as you carry that into the air, please take care. I said, oh, great Spirit, hear my song. Oh, my heart thanks you all day long, and thank you for the day and the night, for the dark and the light. I'm calling, can you hear me? Well, then, a bokamawee. Great Spirit, I hear it, you're calling me too. Well, then I thank you, get ye Manitou, get ye Manitou, get ye Manitou. Thank you for singing.
Thank you. Thank you for your generous gifts. And it's going to be an interesting year, so we might have to dig a little deeper in our pockets. So the homily this morning is Reverend Pritchard, and I'll let him introduce what he's going to speak about.
Okay, they're keeping me busy today. Wow, so, yeah. Oh, okay, so this is basically a whole new speech about Mama Nuchwe. And by the way, she lived in High Falls, near where I live. So she's always been around me. So the name of the speech is Mama Nuchwe's Peacemaker of Kingston, New York. 200 years before Sojourner Truth walked to freedom in Esopus and made the world a little bit freer for all of us. 200 years before Margaret Fuller moved to Beacon and wrote Woman of the 19th Century to empower more women. How many people have read that book? It's great. 300 years before Eleanor Roosevelt moved to Valkill in Hyde Park and started laying the foundations for the United Nations. And 400 years before our own Michelle Hinchy became state senator in Ulster County, advocating for women's rights and the rights of nature. And an untold number of years before the United States finally elects its first woman president. Ulster County, I mean, before all of that, Ulster County was already the home of a woman commander-in-chief. Yes, really. The home of a female leader who was born into freedom, lived free as a bird, certainly more free than most of us today. And the cost of that freedom, of course, that she lived without social security or life insurance, but was held in the security of her countless grandchildren and the assurance of their devotion and their love. And she was chief of the Esopus Munsee people and most of Ulster County, and the commander of armies of warriors, most of which she never really needed, because she was such a good diplomat. But that's why I say commander-in-chief, because that's what she was. She died just as Ulster County was being born. And I like to think she may have even heard the words Ulster County being uttered by white folks. And maybe she said, hey, wait a minute. Ulster County, this isn't Ireland. This is the land of the Esopus Munsee. This is my Sachendom, the Warrenawangkong, which means the place of beautiful waterways and pathways for the mountains. Warrenawangkong, and wait a minute, you're changing the name to what? Ulster County? Hold it. This is Munsee land. And where are we going with this? And then I like to think she said, over my dead body. Well, then she died, you see. I don't know what her real last words were. But they were probably in Munsee, the Delaware language that was spoken here before Henry Hudson popped by. And we do know that she called herself Mama, apparently short for Mama Nuchwe, which means striped blanket. But the European implications were certainly familiar to her, of Mama. She was the great mother of the Esopus people, the Esopus Munsee, in many ways. And like many mothers today, she was a great peacemaker too. Her peacemaking helped shape the city of Kingston. History does tell us that. And so politically, she was, excuse me, also the mother of Sojourner Truth, who well could have known some of her great grandchildren as sympathetic brothers and sisters. Philosophically, she was a mother of Margaret Fuller, although much of Fuller's inspiration came from meeting Ojibwe women from the Great Lakes, hardly different from Mama Nuchwe, who was a close relative to them and almost the same DNA and freedom-loving temperament. So Mama Nuchwe was a spiritual mother of Eleanor Roosevelt, who knew quite a lot about local Native history via her husband, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a founder of the Dutchess County Historical Society with a specialty in Native American studies, FDR. And I like to think that Mama Nuchwe is an invisible guide to Michelle Hinchy. Now I say this, I mean, okay, this is my opinion. I don't mean to impose on her, but I say that because I knew her father, Maurice, and he often told me he kept my book, Native New Yorkers, at his bedside for inspiration, which I take to heart. So he must have read the passages in that book about the Sunk Squaw of Hurley, New York, Mama Nuchwe, one would think. Now, here's the question. Did he ever read those passages to little Michelle and said, now do your homework, Michelle, and you two can grow up to be a wise statesperson? Probably not. I did ask her, and she said, I don't remember. But she is following in the footsteps of countless strong women from behind many backgrounds and cultures who strive to leave behind a more peaceful society than the one they found, and therefore similar to Mama Nuchwe. As female commander-in-chief, one who helped unify the Esopus people during their darkest hour, Mama Nuchwe is certainly a potential role for any woman who might wish to run for president, no names mentioned, to help unify us all in our darkest hour. If Mama Nuchwe were president now, she would find a way to bring us together in unity and peace. The year of Mama Nuchwe's first official appearance in the English records was in 1671, the year that the English, who had already conquered New Netherlands, 7 years earlier, moved in to this area and took over the Kingston area. There was no Ulster County, remember? They took over Kingston. And they did so with a great deal of caution. The new governor, Andros, made his first appearance at the renewal of the Nichols Peace Treaty, which some of you have heard of, and Mama was there. Thomas Chambers, considered a founding father of Kingston, was also there, a very interesting character, by the way. He had long been friend to the Munsee while working under the prickly Peter Stuyvesant and the Dutch. He now could switch back to his original first language, which is English. It was in that meeting that he, get this is a true story, he dubbed her Mama Sheenan, the name she signed the Nichols Treaty with in 1671. Now, Sheenan is a Gaelic word for wise elder. So it kind of sounds like it means in Gaelic, mother of the wise elders, a name she had earned over previous years, apparently. And according to Taylor Brook, who's head of the research at the county archives here in Ulster County, there were no families named Sheenan anywhere in New York Colony at that time. That clan had not yet left the Hebrides. And so it is not from that family name she gets the name, but from Thomas Chambers, the only person present who could have possibly known this honorific Gaelic title and bestowed it upon her. So I'm really sure that he calls her Mama Sheenan, which is a really nice sounding honorific title. He called himself English, by the way, for the sake of his job. For the sake of his job, he said, oh yeah, I'm English, and he was born somewhere in England. But certain documents that I have found show he was a passionate follower of Gaelic traditions in secret. In fact, he made his manor lake in the design of a quake cup. Anybody know what a quake? Okay, I'll explain. Quake cup, and even labeled it as such on his hand-drawn map, which I had seen, which I had to beg to see at the Senate House. Labeled it as such, as a quake cup. A quake cup in itself is a symbol of peace between friends who happen to be Gaelic, who symbolically drink from the same cup at the same time. So there's two handles. And it's often very shallow. So they can kind of sniff the rum or whatever and drink it at the same time. So the fact that she calls herself Mama Sheenan in the physical presence of Thomas Chambers at her first public act speaks volumes about their relationship, we don't know, and about her reputation as a wise elder in the mixed race community that was Kingston in 1671, whites and natives. In later documents, the Dutch who stuck around and are still here among us, referred to her as Mama Rucht, which means Mama's apron strings, an old form of Dutch. Mama's apron strings. I can't figure out if that's a compliment or an insult. The Dutch were really clever with their insults. It implies that she controlled all the purse strings for her unruly children. And I'm sure that was the case as well. She had many nicknames over the years, all starting with the word mama, for she was the great mother of Kingston. Now, the Munsee, by the way, are part of the Algonquin-speaking nations of Native American peoples, and so they tend to follow the ways of Algonquin culture. In those days, the Esopus Munsee were largely in Ulster County and could be found throughout the county. Now they are scattered throughout North America and often intermixed with other tribes. There were many female chiefs then, many, and they were called Sungsquaws. And there's a whole system of being elevated to a Sungsquaw. Generally, you're married to a chief, and then he dies, and then you, as the wife, become chief because you know where the keys are. You know what I'm saying? And it's very common. And they were equally powerful. The Sungsquaws were equally powerful to any chief, and they could summon armies and change boundaries and everything. There were many female chiefs or Sungsquaws in those bygone days throughout Algonquin society, but few were as fine a peacemaker as Mama Nuchwe. She rose above the radar of European history by attempting to keep New York colony out of the King Philip's War, which was raging in New England. And as sachem, she did have the full authority to declare war and summon warriors into battle, just as the Sungsquaw Weetamoo was about to do in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, which was the whole worry. When asked by the Assembly in Albany if the Munsee were planning to join King Philip's vast armies and attack, she did not say yes or no. Either answer would have left her fewer options, and she was a master diplomat. She would not just take a shortcut like that. Never. So she answered instead, the Munsee people desire peace as much as all people desire the light of early morning, which is pleasant for everyone. What an answer. I've been thinking about this answer for the last 10 years. The magistrates in Albany were thunderstruck, and they were left scratching their heads wondering, well, will she attack us or not? That's not an answer. So her lack of clarity was exactly what was needed in order for further discussions and negotiations to take place, and she made sure they did, because they were needed. Mama did not attack, but instead continued to negotiate for both peace and justice, keeping the Munsee out of the war, even as the Mohican and Mohawks to the north, 1 year later, found themselves entangled in that same King Philip's War at Schaghticoke, and it was pretty messy for them. I don't know if you know the story, it was just a mess. But she wasn't involved, and none of her people were at risk. If her statement, we all desire peace as much as we all desire the light of early morning, may sound like she was quoting Gandhi. Let's remember, Gandhi wasn't to be born for another 200 years. So it wasn't that. So what causes her words to have a Gandhi-like ring? Well, this is really interesting. A little complicated, so listen carefully. Mama Nuchwe was following a certain set of traditions which I and others call the way of the heron, a large body of teachings within the oral tradition dedicated to the nonviolent conflict resolution practice. Mama Nuchwe seems to have been a master of these techniques, ones which helped the Munsee people be free of conflict during her administration, which lasted from 1671 to 1684. And the King Philip's War was right in the middle of that. And then now we jump ahead for a moment. In 1830s, a Penobscot tracking guide named Joseph Polis helped the United States to prevent war with Canada over disputes regarding the position of the Maine border, and was successful. He was a great peacemaker. When a young white man from Concord, Mass. Hired him as his tracking guide for a trip to Mount Katahdin, you're thinking, who could that be? The two ended up spending many evenings together talking around the campfire about politics and life in general. You maybe find yourself doing this soon, talking about politics. And the young man, sort of a hippie of his day, happened to ask this wise elder, Joseph Polis, how might Americans protest the war with Mexico? And what he heard in response was from the Way of the Heron playbook. It was called Civil Disobedience. The young man, by the way, was a friend of Margaret Fuller's, a very good friend, who had just written Woman of the 19th Century, and so was not uncomfortable debating revolutionary ideas in a methodical manner, which is what She did. The young man, we won't say his name yet, but the young man kept a diary of his travels with Joseph Polis and of those conversations, and we now call that diary the Maine Woods, and his approach to nonviolent protest, which we call uncivil disobedience, which the young man gave as a speech immediately after returning from his canoe trip, the likes of which he had never given before, so you know where it came from. The speech was delivered to the Women's Auxiliary of Concord, who liked that peaceful message, and published a short version of it in their newsletter that same year. And that article was credited to one Henry David Thoreau. I dropped the shoe, okay. One of his first published writings. The book, excuse me, I'm getting all choked up here, Henry David. The book, The Maine Woods, was published in a series of articles by their mutual friend, Margaret Fuller. Horace Greeley, a mutual friend of both Margaret and Henry. Horace Greeley, in his newspaper called The Tribune, you may have heard of it, Greeley had also helped publish Women of the 19th Century. But the whole of On Civil Disobedience was not published by him, but had to wait. It was not published in book form until 1900, long after Thoreau's death, in an anthology of writings published by Oxford University Press. If you're a really good student of nonviolence, you'll know what's happening next. Oxford students were strongly encouraged to read that anthology that semester, and one of those Oxford students was a law student named Mohandas Gandhi. Small world. He found these peacemaking ideas similar in spirit to those of his Jainist mother's ideas, but he had never seen them spelled out in such a clear way with such political stratagems, and he decided to use them later when he was living in South Africa, and then, since that work, in India. Joseph Polis was from the same Algonquin stock as Mama Nuchwe, and his Penobscot language closely related to her Munsee language, in fact, mutually intelligible for the most part. And so it should not come as a surprise that both followed the way of the heron. And the Talaka, if you will, an ancient Algonquin path to peacemaking. Winona LaDuke is in the same lineage, by the way. One of the Mama Nuchwe's greatest challenges was keeping the peace with her own warriors, a hot-headed group of fighters who didn't much like spending so much time on the sidelines with no one to attack. They just couldn't understand it. Why have warriors if you don't have war? But the Dutch were very nervous about those and called them barebacks. The barebacks had kept the wily Peter Stuyvesant on his toes and had often been involved in conflagrations with the Dutch. And so the English came in, as they took over, with a great deal of diplomacy and respect, offering the Nichols Treaty with its guarantees of peace and with regular treaty renewals and discussions. A brilliant document, by the way. The barebacks may deserve some credit for that level of respect. But of course, there's now conflict between her and the barebacks, because they're like raring to go and like, what's all this peace stuff? There was a significant transfer of Munsee land to the English under the terms of the treaty. All the land between the Rondout and the Esopus rivers. Well, that's really close to here, isn't it? It seems more likely that Mama Nuchwe was present at the negotiations but did not sign. The Esopus River, or creek, as we now say, was the northern border of this land, but it dips down in the middle. So within a short period of time, the Dutch and probably English started to move into this bowl of land that was clearly not part of the Nichols Treaty. It wasn't theirs. They started to build cabins, setting up farms and fences everywhere. And so the barebacks were getting a little violent. Some houses were burned. So in one of her notable acts of peacemaking and diplomacy, she piggybacked onto a meeting about the New Paltz patent, another one revising the Nichols Treaty, which was a bold move to offer the land to the Dutch and the English that they'd already taken for a small amount of wampum and provisions, a very small amount indeed, but everyone agreed to it, and war was averted. That was one of her great peacemaking acts. Now, I met with a woman named Eunice Bauman Nelson, Joe Polis's great-grandniece, in the house next door to the white clapboard house where Henry David Thoreau and Joseph Polis first met. She too taught the way of the heron, not by that name. In the 1950s, she had had an epiphany experience showing her directly how all life was interconnected. She could see it in front of her as a tree, like the branches of a tree all working together, and how we can all live together in a state of harmony like a tree by focusing on changing the way we cohabitate in a more economically sensible way. There are people in this congregation working on that even today. But that brought her back to studying the teachings of Gandhi. Knowing that Gandhi learned from Thoreau, and Thoreau learned from her great-granduncle, she saw a connection between Gandhi's ashram model of cohabitation and those of the Penobscot village that Joseph grew up in, yet another different aspect of the way of the heron. As anthropologists, that's what we're studying at NYU, Eunice studied various communities around the world and how they managed to maintain peaceful coexistence in close quarters. I went to the University of Maine at Orono for a trip and viewed some of her interesting writings on this topic, which were stored there, inspired by Eunice telling me to go do that, of course. I also met once or twice with an elder, Kiwe Nuchwe, who was the grandmother of the Heron clan of the Ojibwe and taught the way of the heron, and a friend of William Commanda, who was my adopted grandfather, who also practiced the way of the heron as a foundation teaching of his Circle of All Nations Culture of Peace organization. The name Way of the Heron comes from the observation that a heron will cross the water and sandwich him or herself in between two other birds who are fighting with one another, probably ducks, and then unfurl his or her 6-foot wingspan in order to gently separate them spatially and then maintain the separation until their tempers have cooled down. There are many aspects of the Algonquin oral tradition called the Way of the Heron. Joseph Polis and Mama Nuchwe both mastered different parts of this art, because it is an art, and so their stories are different. And by the way, not only is an art, there is a spiritual component. In order to make it work in certain circumstances, you have to bring in a certain spiritual power, or it won't work. So I want to make sure you know that I've taught that. I've been taught that. But they are both pursuing the same goal, maintaining a peaceful society or tribe, one in which potential problems are resolved before becoming even minor conflicts through regular ceremonies and rituals of communication. These ceremonies are actually multifaceted modes of communication in which information is shared on a variety of levels at once: practical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. The 4 parts of the self, totally integrated into the process: the spirit, mind, heart, and body, corresponding to the 4 directions of the medicine wheel: east, south, west, and north, going clockwise. It's all the same thing. So the talking feather circle, I don't know if you've ever done a talking feather circle, is an example of a communication ceremony or ritual which is central to the way of the heron. And by the way, I was teaching at the Randolph School millions of years ago, and there was this conflict among the children. And so they said, well, what would the Algonquins do? I said, well, they were talking feather. So I brought out the heron feather, and the kids all sat down, and they all solved their problems. And it was really amazing how they all found their own solutions, and they continued to use the way of the heron talking feather circle for decades. I still teach there once in a while. The participants sit in a circle together and pass the feather. It does not have to be a heron feather, but that and the eagle feather are the traditional choices. The person holding the feather cannot be interrupted, but speaks from the heart until they've said all they can say, and then passes the feather to the left, to the clockwise direction. There is no time in the talking feather circle. Take the clock off the wall. It takes as long as it takes, and you keep going around as many times as it takes, whatever all agree to, until some sort of breakthrough is achieved. I led a talking feather ceremony with the leaders of IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences in Sausalito, when I was there. And it turned out that during the ceremony, the president of the organization decided to retire, to everyone's surprise, because he finally felt free to think about his feelings and concerns and express them. And so he did. He said, I quit. I got a little nervous because I'm leading this thing, and it was an explosion. It turned out to be a very healthy move for the organization, which is still in business today, although my friend Willis Harmon is no longer there. He left this plane of existence. But nonetheless, it was a surprising turn of events, and no one said that peacemaking was a predictable undertaking, and it never is. Giving symbolic gifts while at the same time expressing differences is also an important part of the way of the heron. In 1683, going back, if you follow, we're going back to Mama Nuchwe now. 1683, Mama Nuchwe was summoned to Albany to stand trial for things she did not do. I know some of you have been in traffic court and you probably think you're not guilty. I don't know. But by the representatives of Lord Baltimore, I mean, a guy of some power. Also, those of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they were holding her responsible for all kinds of things. And it was a sham trial in which she was held responsible for acts of unknown individuals in Western Maryland and Virginia, also accused of illegal beaver hunting in those territories. Her, a 70-year-old grandmother, great-grandmother, traipsing around in Western Virginia looking for beaver. Well, Mama Nuchwe's appearance in court was recorded carefully by the future Secretary of Indian Affairs, Robert Livingston the First. And he was very good at Dutch, so that's what was being said. It was noted that she was very polite in her response. It's interesting that she brought 2 other Sunk squaws with her. Apparently Sunk squaws were a dime a dozen in those days, female chiefs, from the Mohicans, and they all stood together, so to speak. To start out, by the way, this is very important in understanding the way of the heron. To start out in this trial defending herself, she humbled herself and her nation and her tribe, describing them as small and meek little tribe that couldn't hurt a fly, basically, that didn't want to hurt anybody. And as she disputed the beaver hunting charge, she brought 2 small beaver pelts with her and gave them to the representatives from Maryland and Virginia. You know, it's like there's a lot of layers to that. It's like, you pitiful people, this is what you want, okay, you have it. Gave them to representatives from Maryland and Virginia. And as she did, she eloquently expressed her regrets and apologies for any misunderstandings, apparently speaking in Dutch, and promised to try to tell her people to hunt further west next time. But she never admitted guilt on their part because she didn't know guilt. Then for the other charges, she gave each of these colonies' representatives a string of wampum, a valuable item, and similar to the condolence beads of the Mohawk, which they had, which were now being used widely at that time. And then she eloquently expressed her regrets for any who had been harmed, and again reaffirming that they were a small, peaceful tribe that couldn't harm anybody, that hardly had the ability to cause harm, and that they, in other words, just didn't do it. The compassion and humility and generosity in combination are all hallmarks of the way of the heron. After this court appearance, Mama Nuchwe seems to have disappeared from public life. Either she left the colonies for her own safety and that of her people, or she fell victim to some of the plagues that were spread among the native people at the time. In any case, the county of Ulster was established at that time in an atmosphere of peace and quiet. And of course, now it's still peace and quiet. Gandhi once said, this is a quote from Gandhi, he said, "We can learn a lot by reading Henry David Thoreau." And he was referring to those Joseph Polis teachings frequently in his talks. When the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, because Black Lives Matter, and this is not superfluous at all, this is essential. When Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King went to India to study at the Gandhi ashram at the suggestion of his friend James Farmer, another great civil rights leader, it was to learn more about Thoreau's teachings as well as about Gandhi's teachings, which Farmer was also following. But the teachings of Thoreau that they were interested in was Polis's teachings on the way of the heron. They were not teachings that Joseph Polis made up. They were traditional teachings he learned from his own ancestors, some of whom would have been contemporaries of Mama Nuchwe, of our own Mama Nuchwe, passing along what I call the way of the heron. So when we hear her say, "We all desire peace as much as we desire the light of early morning, which is pleasant to everyone," and hear the voice of Gandhi, it's really the other way around. You see? It's the other way around, because who's quoting who? So, it is a voice as old as these hills surrounding Sawkill Creek, which the Munsee called Wa Conk, the peaceful valley, or the creek of the peaceful valley. And we live in the sachendom of Wa Conk, which is a small part of Mama Nuchwe's territory. But they lived in peace not only with the earth, not only on the earth and with each other, but lived in peace with the earth. So thank you for listening. Go in peace.
So our closing song is number 38. Morning has broken. Stand if you can. And our closing words, well, Reverend Pritchard will read some more from the Light of Early Morning.
So I thought, instead of reading more from Mama Nuchwe, I'll read a poem called Incantation, which kind of expresses perhaps the aspirations of our moment. Speaking as one with all that is, yes, all that is and more, I say, let us become what we always have been, now as never before. I make the medicine with my mouth, the forming of words called prayer, and repeat the words that have never been spoken, sayings that have no sayer, words that hang in space like moons pulled from the planet's core, with power that is found in every rock and in every tree is stored, restoring worlds of deep deception, destroying worlds of deep deception deeper than the lunar oceans, speaking of which and who and why, words setting worlds to motion, debating and demanding questions now clapped with a thunderous roar, speaking as one with all that is, yes, all that is and more. And I'm standing here now in no man's land, yet with every man I stand. With a start I awaken late in the day, much later than I had planned, and yet I'm present and accounted for as light spreads across the deep, this great getting up morning song that awakens us from sleep. I send a voice to reach God's ears, played back on citizens' band. The message turns to the songs of birds that were dreamed into being by man. The message translates into a dance as the whole planet suddenly seems to spin in an ecstatic trance, lost in a dreamtime dream. And that message began as a call for help, but our fate is in our own joined hands. So I'm standing here in no man's land, yet with every man I stand. And now I say to the face in the mirror-like lake, please let us speak now, me and you. And I ask for some help from this troubled old world. Please help out our old world get through. Let's speak, you and I sadly cry. And God is crying too. And he said to me, or was it he to we, the tapestry of life's wearing through. And with the gift of speech, we say each to each, oh, what are you going to do? And the answer comes like the sound of drums. Revelations we already knew. And he said, what am I going to do, you ask? What am I going to do? The trumpet sounds and it calls, resounds like the bird that sings CQ. Did you get the message we sent you, my scribe? Did you get the message we sent you? So I'll close with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, this about concludes for today. So we will extinguish the chalice, and with these words, we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Go in peace. And thanks to Kathy, we have yummies and drinks and stay around and